Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second online meeting of the Bromford and Hodge Hill Ward Forum. This is the second meeting streamed by Microsoft Teams. And thank you for everybody who's come along, who's embracing the technology and taking the time to attend. I'd like to advise residents that the meeting is being recorded and a record of the meeting will be available for future record. The version of Teams we're using this evening is Teams Live, so some of you may be familiar with Teams, but this is slightly different. So if you have any questions, please put your questions in the chat box, and then we can answer your questions as they arise. I'll take them in order as they come along. Please keep them relevant to the agenda item. If you've got anything that's not covered in the agenda items that you want to ask, can you leave them to the end of the meeting and we'll address them then. We may be changing in the future to the other version of Teams when you can speak live, but for the moment this is the version that Birmingham City Council has chosen to use. Right, so the first agenda item, we've got a COVID update from Dr. Justin Vardy from the Birmingham Public Health Officers. Hello, Justin.
Hi, Councillor.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for coming along. Would you like to update us on what's happening regarding COVID in the city?
Yeah, so I'll give a short overview, and if people use the chat box to ask any questions, then I'll try and cover them off. So you will have seen a lot of the media coverage in terms of where we are as a city. Certainly at the moment, cases in Birmingham are rising, and we are seeing an increase in the number of cases per 100,000 population. And it's a bit of a mixed picture, frankly, at the moment. On one hand, we've massively increased testing in the city. So we're now doing about 10,000 more tests a week than we were 2 weeks ago. And overall in the city, we're seeing about 2,000 tests per 100,000 population. So you've got to times that by 11, and I keep forgetting to do it on my calculator, so we'll just do it now quickly for you. So that means we are doing about 23,000 tests a week, give or take, across the city, and we have now 6 walk-through testing sites live and 2 drive-through testing sites. The West Midlands and the north of England is being prioritised. So we know that people have problems getting access to a test, but there is more testing here than there is, frankly, in quite a lot of the rest of the country. And the advice is to just keep trying to get a test, but only get a test if you're symptomatic or if you're asked to either by the NHS Test and Trace service or by the Public Health Department. Now, in some areas of the city, we're also doing drop and collect. This is where someone might knock on your door from the council. They'll have a high-vis jacket. They'll have a letter that shows, or a badge that shows where they're from, and they'll offer you a free test for you and anyone else who's in the house with you at the time. What we're doing is we're using that in areas where we're seeing an increase in cases, but not enough people are testing in the area. So we've got, say, in 6 streets, 3 houses with cases, and they're all on the same street, but no one else has tested positive, and there doesn't seem to be any family connection between the houses. So we need to do some more testing to work out, is there something else in the community going on? And this is about actually the whole community's got the spread of COVID, or is it something else? And this is a model that was used very effectively in Leicester and in Blackburn to try and understand the pattern of spread of the disease in small geographic areas where you see a sudden spike, but not enough people are testing for you to be confident that you've got the whole picture of what's going on. So if you do have someone who knocks on your door, offers you this free test, please do it. We are going to be doing it in Bromford and Hodge Hill. But we are trying to let the councillors know when it's coming. But it's important, if we are moving it around day on day, actually, that the schedule changes every day for the next day based on the numbers that are coming through. So it's a very reactive service and response. It's important to say those test kits don't have any impact on your ability to get a testing appointment through the national website. It's a kind of separate bubble of special kits that we've been given because we're an area of concern, an area of national intervention. So they came as a kind of separate thing specifically for this programme. That's why I can't take them and give them out to everyone who's got symptoms and can't get a test. There are some quite tight strings around them. But they are making a difference, and we're already over the last week and a half that we've been doing this, we've already found cases and started to fill in the gaps in what's going on and why is this spread happening. The majority of spread is happening in two areas. One is people meeting indoors in private homes and private gardens, and that's what has led to the spike we saw, particularly at the end of at the end of August. And then the other is happening in hospitality venues, particularly where people have been standing up, and particularly later at night where they're drunk a little bit more alcohol and they're getting a bit more freer with their touching of each other and not keeping that social distance. And that's why the restrictions came in about locally about asking people to move to sit down table service only and to not go into each other's homes. And now the restriction on table service only and the curfews being brought in nationally. Now, if numbers continue to rise, then we may well see further restrictions. And, you know, I have to say, from my perspective, looking at the numbers, it is this mixed picture of testing's really increased, but we are seeing the proportion of tests that are positive just starting to creep up again. And that's the bit I'm watching most carefully. If the proportion of tests increase significantly, then that makes me very worried. We are seeing an increase in hospitalizations, but that has kind of risen and now kind of stayed flat for a bit. Hospitalizations normally run 2 to 3 weeks after we get a spike in community cases. So what we're seeing now is probably the reflection of the spike we had in the middle of August when we moved into an area of enhanced support. So that's probably the pattern that we're starting to see, is that what's happening now in our hospitals is about what happened in our community in the middle of August. And in about 2 weeks' time, we will see what happened at the end of August when we had another big spike start to play out in the hospitals. And sadly, we will then also see the deaths come through. And we are just starting to see deaths creeping up again in Birmingham. And that, as I said, reflects the rise that we had, I think, in middle of August. And I'm afraid will continue to go up as things go further forward. I'll just finish on a couple of short points that I want to make about risk reduction. So one thing to really get across is the point about if you have symptoms of COVID, so if you have a high temperature, a new continuous cough, or a loss of sense of smell or taste, then please behave as if that is COVID. If it looks like COVID, it smells like COVID, it tastes like COVID, it probably is COVID. So if you've got any of those 3 symptoms, please isolate at home with your household until you get a test that tells you it isn't COVID. And when it says isolate at home, that means don't go to the shops, don't go to mosque, don't go to church, don't go to work, stay at home. Unfortunately, at the moment, I am seeing some examples where people have not really understood that message. So they've got someone at home with them who's got a really high temperature and they've just popped down to Asda. Please don't do that. Please stay at home, order it in. If you need help, there are help numbers on the council website where we can help with getting food to people and support. If you know, but really, really important. If it looks like COVID, treat it like COVID until you get a test result that says it's either definitely COVID or it's not. The other thing I want to just say about that is that there's a lot of fake news going on about false positives and people who are being tested and don't have symptoms and then test positive for COVID. Now, what we're starting to see is that there are 2 things happening. One is we know if you've definitely had COVID, then you probably still produce, you still have some virus circulating in your body, but it's kind of gone to sleep. You're not infectious, but that lasts for about 7 or 8 weeks. So we're certainly seeing in the care homes where we're testing repeatedly, there's no point testing someone who's definitely had COVID again in a kind of 6-week period, because it will be picked up again. So in someone who's had COVID, and if they're retested too soon, they will get it's not necessarily a false positive, but it's an old positive, if that makes sense. The other place where we see people who are asymptomatic who test positive is often when people test positive and they're very early in their disease. So they've caught the virus, there's enough of it in the back of their throat or the back of their nose that they have definitely got COVID, and they probably are infectious with it, but actually they haven't developed symptoms. And many of these people 2 or 3 days later develop a temperature or develop a cough. So it's more about where they've been tested in their kind of journey with the virus. There is very clear evidence that people who have got COVID and have very, very mild symptoms, so much they might not even notice them, can spread the virus. So people who are asymptomatic, who don't have very strong symptoms and are positive, can still spread the virus, and that's why they have to isolate, and all their household isolates as well. I think probably if I stop there, councillors, I'm happy to take any questions or answer anything in the chat box, but otherwise I can go on for hours on COVID. It's my specialist mastermind topic at the moment, and I don't want to take all of your ward forum.
I just wanted to ask a question, Justin. If you've had COVID, let's say about 6 months ago, is there a test that can show that if you had COVID or not?
It's a really good question. So there is an antibody test. There are 2 types of tests. There's the antigen test, which is the test that's the cotton wool bud that goes right up the back of your nose or the back of your throat. That's looking, have you got COVID now? Mm-hmm. And there's a blood test that they take from the vein in your arm, and that's looking, have you had it and do you have antibodies? Now, the problem with the antibody test is at the moment, unless you work in the NHS, you can only really get it if you're on a research study or you pay for it privately. And paying for it privately is usually about £100 to £190. Now, the evidence about antibodies is that about 1/3 of people who definitely had COVID don't make antibodies. Their body doesn't learn how to do it. Of the 2/3 that do make antibodies, 1/3 of them forget how to make them quite quickly, and 1/3 of them don't make them. They don't work properly. They don't defend the body. So you've only really got 1/3 of 2/3, which I think is about 1/6 of people. My maths is not great. It's only about 1/6 of people who actually develop a meaningful antibody response to having had the virus. So my advice at the moment is, frankly, it's not worth wasting. It's not worth wasting your money on antibody tests, because the other thing we would say is, even if you tested positive, you could be in that quite large group of people who've got antibodies, but they just don't work well enough to defend you. And we've now got really good evidence in the UK of people who've caught COVID definitely more than once. And so the really important message is, even if you're pretty sure you had it, you've still got to do all the social distancing, all the other things, because you can catch it again. And it might not have killed you the first time, but it could well the second time. So it's a really important thing. My advice: don't waste your money on the blood test at the moment. It doesn't change anything, and unless you're just really curious, I wouldn't put yourself through the pain.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions for Dr. Barney?
I can see one in the chat. Shall I pick up the question that's in the chat? So there's a question in the chat about key workers and testing priority. So the government has announced that they are going to be prioritising testing for NHS workers, but they haven't said how yet. So I think it probably will be a box on the website when you go to book a test. It will ask if you're an NHS worker, and it probably asks you which NHS organisation you work for, so that people don't try and fiddle the system. If you work in a hospital, at the moment there is already testing available to NHS staff, and in care homes there's also testing available. Now at the moment I haven't seen anything that allows priority for teachers or for bin men or for other essential workers like policemen. It is something we've been raising as a council about. Let's not have a two-tier system when it comes to the public sector again. We did this, you remember at the beginning when testing was really scarce and they kind of rolled it out, and it was the NHS first, then it was the police, then it was social care, then we finally got to the bin men, you know, and to firemen. So it was kind of, we need to avoid that and try and get a better way. But at the moment, I would say it's only really there for the NHS. I think there was also a question about queuing. Shall I pick that one up as well?
Sorry, I'm not seeing the questions.
No, I'll pick them up. There was a question about queuing at schools, and I think it's a really important point from Mr. Ali about actually, you know, schools. Part of what schools are supposed to be doing is managing arrival and leaving time. So lots of schools have got different year groups coming in on different days of the week. They're starting at different times. That's all to try and manage the avoidance of queues. And where we have seen transmission at school, one of the biggest risks is starting and leaving time. It's parents mingling around the school gates. And, you know, we all know what it's like when you take your kids to school, you stop and have a natter because you see your friends. And the problem is people aren't keeping their social distance. And, you know, and that's one of the bits to be really, really aware of. You know, if you're taking kids to school, take them, drop them off and go, and keep your distance from other parents and other children. Once the kids are in the school, schools are generally pretty good at keeping the distance between children. You know, where we're seeing cases in school, it's more about what's going on in the community than actually any breaches in the school itself. And I have to say, you know, sadly, I am seeing children where it's clear that it's been a birthday party that's been held in private, and suddenly we've got 6 children and then their families are all testing positive. You know, and I think there is this bit, it's going to be a difficult year where we can't really celebrate in the way we would do normally, but please avoid things like that because it's too high risk at the moment, and we've just got to be so conscious about protecting each other and doing the right thing. And for the sake of a bit of cake and a celebration this year, please postpone it and do a mega birthday party when we got the vaccine and this is all over.
Good advice. Also, residents have said that the drop and collect tests, they're being delivered during the day when many people are out at work and they're not getting them. Is it just during the day they're going to be distributed and collected?
So we're working on this at the moment, and it's a really important point. So what we've been doing is over the last couple of weeks, gradually building up the number of people to do this, to do drop and collect. The army, well, it's not, sorry, it's the RAF are now helping us as well, which is brilliant. The limiting factors being people who've got the right license to drive minibuses, because we drive people around the city and drop them. So over this week, that's been building up as well. And my hope is from next week, there will be drops happening in the evening and also at the weekend. So each
license.
Yeah, so well, if you've got a minibus, like, let us know. Talk. You know, we're really keen to have elected members involved as well, as you both know. You know, particularly if we're coming in your ward, it would really help us, and I think many members are helping us when we let you know. But we are building this up slowly, and I have to say, you know, we've gone from doing 100 households a day to knocking on 700 households doors a day. And we've gone from delivering 30 or 40 kits to delivering 400 kits a day and getting them back. So it is growing slowly. You know, we're working as fast as we can. And I think certainly next week we'll see evenings and weekend rounds as well. What we don't want to do is say to you, we will be, and sorry, I should say, we put out on Twitter, because it's the fastest way, Twitter and Facebook, saying where we're going to be the next day. But don't stay in for us specially. You know, this is a bit of extra work we're doing to do a bit deeper dive and to try and understand the pattern in particular areas. You know, the most important thing is if you've got symptoms, get your test kit through ringing 119 or going on the NHS website. Drop and collect is about trying to fill in the gaps. It's not the solution to the testing problems. And my hope is that over the next week, we will see some of the big labs opening up and actually testing will start to flow much more easily for all of us.
Okay, thank you. I can't see if there are any more questions.
Hi Dan, I've got a couple of questions, but I've been looking for my raised hand. I can't find it for some reason. But if it's okay with you, I've got a few questions. Now that we've got the pleasure of Dr. Varney here, we can't let him go without asking him a number of questions, specifically around Bromford and Hodge. So firstly, thank you for drafting that letter around social distancing for the local schools. That was really important because one of the issues we did have across all the schools, I'm a governor at Hodge College, and we did have a meeting specifically around the social distancing, and they've staggered all their opening times and closing times, and they've tried a few different ways of getting the people in without the parents congregating outside. It's finally worked. It's a tried and tested method over the last two weeks, but I think we've finally got there with the different times, because the difficulty we have, lots of parents, especially around Hodge, where you've got a campus of 3 schools, you've got a primary school, a girls' school and a mixed school, and you've got parents like I'm one, for example, where I've got a child at every single school on that campus. But we live around the corner, so kids go themselves anyway. So we're not to blame for the congregating outside. But thank you for that letter; it's really helpful. But on that, there's also a little issue which I still need to chase up licensing with. There's an ice cream van that comes when school closes, and with the hot weather we've had in the last week and a half, the social distance is non-existent, because he parks on the grass verge where we've actually got double raised curb to prevent that, but he still manages to get on. And there's a queue of kids and parents waiting. The kids are waiting for the ice cream. The parents are waiting for the kids to buy the ice cream. That really needs to be looked into. I don't know whether it's yourself that can do that or whether I need to approach licensing, because I believe they license the ice cream van. But that's one of the issues we've got. The other issue, because I'll go through all the ones I've got and then hopefully you can come back to us on that, is we keep getting told on the emails and the various meetings we have as elected members that the data shows that people are contracting COVID at home, specifically at home or in pubs, clubs, etc. But we're not given the specific data on that in terms of the percentages, like what percentage of people are catching it at home. I've not come across that, but it would be really useful, because then we can use that to cascade that down to our communities. In terms of Bromford and Hodge, myself and Dan, we've already volunteered to help with the dropping off of the test kits. And Dan raised a really good point, because most people are working, especially in our ward during the daytime. And I know there's some slots, because we were given a list of slots. Some were for evenings, some were for weekends. I mean, I work myself, so it'll be difficult for me to engage in the daytimes, but I can do evening slots. And Diana, we're blessed that she can drive as well. So she's really useful campaign time for us. I think this time she'll be really useful in terms of dropping off the kits as well. But currently the advice given on the testing kits is that you only ask for a test if you've got symptoms. But on the drop-off kits, just for confirmation again from yourself, that will be for anyone to take the test, or are we going to revert back to just those with symptoms? Schools we've got, I mean, initially I thought it was the government. When I was at a governor's meeting last week, I was sort of like got at by the different governors saying, why have you only given us 10 tests? I thought it was a national thing where 10 tests were delivered to schools, but the leader informed us Tuesday evening, that it's actually the city council itself giving 10 test kits to all the schools. I'm just wondering whether there's going to be an option of increasing that amount to the school. And the 3 issues that I think the council, and possibly, well, hopefully just the council, we don't really need to involve the police yet, because there needs to be a light touch approach to this, in terms of where I do believe there is non-existent social distancing happening. One is when, especially with the number of the girls' school across the city, the parents, especially those from the Muslim community, tend to drop off a number of children, like family children, like nieces, etc., their neighbours' children, collectively in minibuses. I do think there needs to be a reminder set to the schools to give out to parents that needs to stop. Secondly, there's lots of private tutoring that takes place in households across the city. Again, I do think we need to put something in the Birmingham Mail, not just social media, because not everyone is on social media, to warn people about the risks of having private tutoring in their homes currently. The social bubble only includes one adult member of the household. So you can only social bubble with the household, but there's one adult. But a lot of people still seem to think that it's okay to have a social bubble with just one household, irrespective of the number of occupants in the household. And on a daily basis, I'm having to advise people, look, you can only have that social bubble. Like I've got one with my mom. She lives on her own, so that's fine. She's an adult on her own. My social bubble is with mom. But if my dad, if he was alive, then I couldn't have had that as a social bubble, because it's true, and that needs to get to, because I don't think that message is going through. I've got a number of friends who this week were actually COVID tested positive, one in Allen Rock and 2 in Small Heath, and they connected amongst each other. But then a lot of their other friends who were with them over the last week and stuff, and they went out to eat and stuff, because this Eat at Help Out did not help us in Birmingham. And you saw the massive queues, and I think that's partly to blame, because if you look at the data for Hodge constituency, the number of people infected is more or less the second highest in the city, and Hodge constituency was also the second highest in terms of the amount of meals claimed in the city under the Eat Out Help Out scheme, and Hallgreen was number 1, and Hallgreen's got the highest number of infections. So put 2 and 2 together, it does look like there's a correlation between that. So that would be really useful if those 3. And the third one, and as a Muslim, this is difficult for me to say, because it's Muslims doing this, but the funerals, you can have up to 30 people at a funeral. Unfortunately, what's happening, I think there does need to be a reminder, because I know you have a meeting with all the mosques on a regular basis, is what's happening is your normal 5 daily prayers, there's an infinite number of people who can attend, provided they social distance. Funeral prayers are happening straight after your normal prayer, but then they're not sticking to the 30 rule for that. They're sticking with the infinite number of people, because there's I think the mosques just need to be reminded that there is a difference in terms of the normal prayer and the funeral prayer. And when you have the funeral prayer, this friend of mine, he's close to, I'm not going to say who they are, but the close family friends of ours, and I haven't attended any funeral during COVID, just to make everyone aware, because of the risks entailed. But I know for a fact, based on the feedback I've had, the tradition is to show the face of the deceased if it's a male, and people have been congregating and going into the queues. I really do think that is a major problem. It's not, it's difficult for me to say that in public. So I'm just hoping something, if you can have a conversation with the Muslim leaders that you meet on a weekly basis, please. And I'll let Justin reply now, if that's okay, Chair.
Certainly, yeah.
Right, so quite a lot there, and I'll try and remember it all. So let's start with ice cream van. Really good point. So the ice cream van owner is responsible for having a risk assessment, which includes managing the queue and keeping it socially distanced. So if you see something like that and it's not working, please report it through the council's whistleblowing portal. There's a helpline number there, or you can fill in the web form. We've had over 1,000 reported. In general, I would say 95% of businesses, when we have the conversation, that the business does the right thing and sorts it out. And in the smaller number where they don't, well, we take enforcement action. So please report when you're seeing bad stuff, report it and let us know. And colleagues in enforcement.
Dr. Varney, can I just interject there on the ice cream van incident? Because he's parking on the grass verge. Sorry, I'm Kevin from Keir Highways. Because he's parking on the grass verge, I can do something about that. So leave that one with me. I'll deal with that.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you.
Even better, you get him on a parking violation as well. There we go.
Not quite on a parking violation, but we can get him. We can get him moved.
Get him other ways.
Moved out the way. Yeah.
But it is a really important point. If you see businesses where they're not doing what they should, that's why we've got the whistleblowing. If you work in a business, and this is why we set this up. If you work in a business where things aren't being done correctly, the whistleblowing line is anonymous. It's there because we saw in some of the big outbreaks, particularly the one in Sandwell, you remember a couple of months ago, the staff knew things weren't right, but they didn't know who to talk to. So that's why we did it as a council. So moving on to drop and collect. Yes, you're quite right, Councillor. In areas where we offer you a test kit in drop and collect, it's for everyone in the house, whether they've got symptoms or not, right? And it's a very specific, in effect, think of it as a research study. It's probably the best way of describing it. That's why it is different. And please, if you are offered the kits, please use them, because it helps us just understand where the spread of this virus is in the disease. And what it's doing is it's picking up people who've got very, very mild symptoms. They have got some symptoms, but they're very mild. And we've already picked up, I think, about 11 different houses so far where that's the case in different areas of the city. And when I look at the dots of the cases on the map, it really helps me see the difference in terms of that. In terms of the point about enforcement, one of the challenges we've had is that national governments announced this is going to happen, and then the legislation that allows the police to take action usually takes 3 or 4 days to come into effect. So it's one of the reasons why, you know, the press got wind of the announcement on hospitality. Prime Minister announced it on Tuesday. It doesn't come into effect till Thursday. It's because the law came into effect tonight. And the same is true of some of the fines and some of the bits that the police are able to do. But in general, if it's a business not doing what it should, report it to the council. If it's a person not doing what they should, report it to the police. And that is a very general rule of thumb. Both the council and the police have got sections on their websites you can report, usually by web form, or you can ring up. And they are responding reasonably quickly and to these when we see them, because it is such a high risk situation. Finally, on the testing kits, I think what the leader was trying to say was what we've done. So the testing, every school was given 10 testing kits by the government. What we've done is we've replaced some of those through the routes that we have in the council, because they were only able to reorder last week and not everyone did. So basically what we've done is helped a little bit around the edges. And I got a special permission to do that with some of the testing kits we have. But there is now a system where every school can get a number of kits. It's now done based on the total number of children in the school. So when it started, it was every school got the same number. Now I think it's about 2.5% of their total head count so some will get 10, some will get 50, depending on the size, and they can reorder them as they run out. So that, I think, will really help. Those kits are for children or staff who become symptomatic at school. So the idea is, if you've got a kid that suddenly develops a temperature, you send the child home with the testing kit, because that makes it faster for them to get results. It's not, if your daughter gets a temperature on Sunday, you can ring up the school and go and get a kit on a Monday. So that's not what they're there for. They're there to go home with sick children to speed things up. If your child's sick over the weekend, it's 119 or the government website. Did I capture everything there?
Just on that, when I was at the governor's meeting last week at Hodge College, the difficulty they were getting, it was quite challenging for them. 119 was actually referring parents to go to the school for the test. But as you know, they're not supposed to be doing that. And this was quite difficult for the teachers to say no to the parents, because the parents were quite insistent. They couldn't find the test on the website. So the 119 then just said, well, you're going to have to go to the school, which was unfair to the school as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have been picking that up with DFE about some of the messaging, because either you have a process in which the schools have kind of got unlimited supplies, in which case that would be fine. But you can't do it when the schools have got very scarce supply. And in most schools, 10 kits they burnt through in a day or two. I mean, you know, in larger schools, they will have had that number of kids. I mean, I think the picture in schools, and as you said, you know, the schools are getting better at managing this. We certainly saw in countries like Denmark, who opened their schools earlier, the first month was exactly what we're living through now. Loads of kids being sent home, big bubble sizes, issues about people leaving and arriving. And it gradually calmed down, and actually people really got into a routine, and also bubbles got smaller and the schools got more used to how to manage it, and the children got more used to it, because that's the other big bit of this is, you know, on one side we all go, well, the schools. it's also about our own kids. And it's about actually how we help them to understand why it's really important that they don't go running around the playground hugging all their friends when it's break time. You know, it's a difficult one, but that's where we're seeing the spread. On the final point you raised about the evidence, it's a difficult one. So what we see at the moment is, so I get a kind of tracker, and I will be doing more on this in the presentation to the Outbreak Engagement Board next week on the 1st of October, is that we see from the contact tracing system where all the contacts are. So in Birmingham, the vast majority of contacts, and I would say well over 90% of people who've been identified through test and trace who are at risk when someone tests positive, either live with them or are family and friends who've been visiting. Vast majority. I mean, it's literally, I have kind of all the different categories, and the top two bars are households and family, friend, visitors. And the household one's over here, and the friends and family is here, and everything else is this tiny little block on its own. So it's a really, really visible difference. Where we also see this, and this is, I'll give this as a really clear example. We had a group that went to a wedding reception of 30 people, sat on tables of 6 in a restaurant that had done everything right. The parents of the groom, I think it was, or the bride, I can't remember which one, went and shook everyone's hand. 25 out of those 30 people now have COVID. That's why it's really important people pay attention. And just picking up on those final points you raised, so with the mosques, we are working really closely with them. We have tested with government this. So where there's funeral prayer as part of congregational prayer, that is allowed, providing it is part of the normal congregational service. And it is acceptable for the filing out past the coffin to happen, so the viewing of the body to happen in a socially distanced way, as long as that is controlled as part of the exit process. But what you can't do is have a separate funeral service. Now, the rules changed as of today, I think it is. So funerals stay at 30, but weddings reduced to 15. And that's from Monday, sorry, it comes into effect, and that includes wedding receptions. Now, the important thing that's changed is in a funeral, your 30 includes the imam and any of the ushers, so it includes any of the staff. In the 15 for a wedding, that now no longer includes the registrar, so the officiant of the wedding is not included in the 15. So that does help. So although the overall number of guests has got smaller, there's a little bit of relaxation in that actually the officials don't count anymore. The other thing I'd just say is in England, children count as much as adults. Now, I probably would, from my point of view, make an exception for a baby, but if it can walk, it's counted as one. So that's a really important point to make as well. In the terms of your total number of 30 or 15, if the child can walk, then it's counted as an individual. If it's a very small baby, then I think we probably wouldn't count that in your totals. But if it can, and I'd count crawling, if it's mobile under its own steam, it's spreading COVID on its own. So that's why it counts in the numbers.
So with the weddings, sorry, Chair, through you, with the weddings now, your 15 people, does that still include the, so does that still, is that now including the photographer, the cameraman?
Yeah, so 15 people doesn't include the officials and it doesn't include the photographer. And we're just updating the website, so it'll be updated, I think, tomorrow with the new guidance on this on the council website, because I was just going through it with Paul Lancaster, who leads on enforcement today earlier with our interfaith group. So just to be clear on this, it's very specific about what it does and doesn't include. So it doesn't include the officiant, the registrar or the imam. It doesn't include the photographer, but I think it does include people like your ushers. So you can't suddenly make all your cousins your ushers and kind of dodge it that way. It's the people who are not related to the wedding, this is their job coming in. And the final point that I just pick up on is the point you made about home tutors. So I've put into the chat box the links both to the local restrictions with the exemption. There is an exemption that allows people who do a job to come into your home. So that would include cleaners, plumbers, electricians, and it would include home tutors. However, the home tutor has to abide by the guidelines for working in other people's homes, and the home tutor has to have a risk assessment. So if a tutor is coming into your home to work with your child, then you should be asking them, what's your risk assessment? And they have to keep socially distanced, and they have to wash their hands and all those other things as well. So it shouldn't be the same as what it was perhaps in February. And it might be a good tip for parents. If you're looking for a home tutor at the moment, ask the question, how are they going to keep your child safe and your family safe if they're coming into your home? And if they can't give you a straight answer, take your business somewhere else.
The home tutor, it's predominantly children going to the house of the tutor. It happens quite a lot, and a number of people have complained to me. So just on the funeral issue, so let me get my head straight, because I've had lots of queries about this. And I was waiting for this evening. Is if it's a congregational prayer, that's fine. You can social this infinite number. Then if you hold the funeral prayer after the congregational prayer, the same individuals can participate in the funeral prayer regardless of the number. The 30 isn't included because it's part of a congregational prayer, and they can file past the deceased body as long as it's social distance. There's a meter between the individuals, and the mosque obviously is responsible to make that announcement. Is that correct? Can I now give that advice to anyone who asks?
Yeah, and if they want to follow up, I mean, Paul Lancaster in the council is the guru on this, and as I said, we've been meeting the mosques every other week, and then I meet all the faiths together the week I'm not meeting them as individuals. We've gone through this in a lot of detail each time, so I think if you have got any mosques that are questioning, point them to Paul, and he'll take them through chapter and verse on how to do it safely, because there's been a lot of thinking and there's some really good practice. And what I would say is where we have had people that unfortunately did go to congregational prayer in a faith setting and tested positive, when we've gone through the risk assessment, we haven't had to go and test loads of people because they've been so good at social distancing, disposable prayer mats, all of that. You know, the problem where we've seen it has people leaving, particularly we've seen this in mosques, but we have seen it in some of the temples as well, is they leave and then they all go shake hands in the car park. You know, and then it does all the good stuff. You know, and I think that's the bit about keeping in mind, you know, people are really good when they're in class, when they're at work, when they're at prayer. The problem is when they leave, and it's in those moments of leaving, it's so easy to reach out and try and show friendship with a handshake or a hug, and we're just giving COVID to each other, and we need to avoid that if we can.
Okay. Final point, Chair, before we let Justin go. We're blessed to have him here, so let's make the most of it. Is connected partly to the funeral prayers. We've had lots of kickback from predominantly Muslims in the area saying, why are the cemeteries restricted with their hours? And now, like looking outside, it's getting dark now, and they're open till 7. So obviously the hours will need to come forward a bit, because otherwise they'll be in the cemeteries when it's quite dark. But now that there is permission to have your funeral prayer alongside a congregational prayer, why are the cemeteries still restricted with their hours when no other part of the country has got restricted hours for cemeteries?
Yeah, so that one's more a question for Paul, I'm afraid, than me, because I don't control cemetery opening hours. So I think that the one thing I would say is, you know, please keep in mind that the council, like every other business, is still working through COVID, and still balancing the demands and the pressures. And you know, we've got one of the challenges we have is actually there's a huge amount of work we're doing on COVID that perhaps citizens don't see. You know, and it's not just a full-time job for my team, it's actually a full-time job for a lot of other people. So things like drop and collect, staff from many of the neighbourhood services have been redeployed to help, because we're only going to be doing this for about 6 or 8 weeks. It's part of our emergency response. And that's taken people off doing other things that they would normally do. I know that Councillor Thompson, who leads that portfolio, is pretty much every week is reviewing the position. And he's very keen to see, can we do more? Can we make it more accessible? Because we have heard very loudly from families, from relatives, they want to be able to show their respects more. And now we're doing less less burials. It's easier because that was the limiting factor before. We do need to keep in mind, though, the number of deaths is likely to rise again. And that's the really sad reality of where we are at the moment. But I will feed that back to Paul, and I'm sure you will directly as well, Councillor. But he's your man, and he may be what you may want to invite him.
An email off me this week. I'm waiting for the reply.
I just asked Justin regarding HMOs. What is the bubble in a HMO, a house of multiple occupation? Yeah. Because it could be, say, up to about 8. I don't know, sure. Depending on the size of the house, 8 residents. Yeah. Have they each got their own bubble of 6 people, or how does it work?
So it depends a bit on the setup. So the way I kind of describe this is, if you share a bathroom or a kitchen, then you're a household with everyone else who shares the same facilities. If you've got your own bathroom and your own kitchen, then you're a household on your own. So it's a bit like the difference between being in a hotel, where you've got your own bathroom and you just go out to eat, so you're not sharing cooking facilities with everyone, or being in a hostel where you may well have a shared kitchen, but you might have your own toilet in your ensuite and a shared bathroom. So it's really the sharing of those kitchen facilities and the bathroom facilities which define whether the whole building or a whole floor, for example, is a bubble, or whether the individual bed sits, for example, are considered households on their own. Does that make sense?
If they've got shared amenities like bathroom, kitchen, and they've got 6 bedrooms, potentially 6.
Yep, they're all one bubble.
They're one bubble, so they can't have any guests coming.
So this, yeah, we encountered this quite early on actually with one of our homeless hostels, which had exactly that set up. So the problem, and it was really sad actually situation, because one of the individuals had a very elderly relative who unfortunately was approaching their end of life. So they wanted to bubble, but that would mean that no one else in the rest of the facility could bubble, because it's one household of any size and one single person household. So you can only bubble once. And so in that situation, like an HMO, that household of 6 people could bubble with one other person in one other house, but they can't have 6 bubbles. They can only have one. So in general, houses like that, we would say, don't form social bubbles. The household needs to stay as itself.
Okay, so this is very difficult to control then, and potentially there's a high risk factors in HMOs. How are they being controlled? Is there any controls?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose at the moment in Birmingham, because we have a restriction which says you shouldn't have any, you shouldn't have anyone into your private house or your private garden, and you shouldn't go and visit anyone else's unless you have this very, very specific set of exemptions. And you can be fined, and the police are the ones that would act on that. That's where the enforcement happen. Most people do seem to be abiding by it, actually. I don't get the sense that there's kind of willful huge numbers disrespecting it, and that is starting to play out in the changing pattern. We are starting to see, and we've only had it a week, I wouldn't expect to see significant impact in the numbers for about another 2 weeks from that, but we were already making noises about this back in the middle of August, so it's probably helping us a little bit now that we started early, kind of impressing this on people. In terms of the HMOs, particularly in the city, we've been working with Councillor Thompson's team to do a kind of welcome pack to give to landlords. So anyone that moves into an HMO, here's a welcome pack. It explains your rights, it explains about testing, those kind of things. In terms of the students in the city, I've been working with all 5 universities, and they've been doing specific work with private landlords as well as the stuff done with the student halls of residence that, you know, we normally recognise. And we're doing a lot of community work with particularly some of the most vulnerable in our communities who may well be living in these HMO properties. So reaching out through organisations that work with our refugee and asylum seeker population, with our Roma community, with some of our African communities and our Asian communities. So I think what we're doing at the moment is the kind of educate and awareness side. But there is the enforcement stick if it's needed, and that sits through the police and to some extent the council, and that's why we've got the whistleblowing helplines.
Okay, thank you. And my other query is about pubs. I've noticed it was in a pub restaurant that some people, and I think it's older generation, will go up to the bar and they'll take the glass that they've used and use it again to have beer poured into it from the taps. Is that a potential risk? In my opinion, it's not very hygienic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to say, I would probably prefer that you got a fresh glass each time.
Yeah.
And the reason I would say that is that I can see the logic, because you've contaminated that glass. The problem is you're giving it to the barman or the barmaid to and they're going to have to hold it where you have to hold it under the tap. So it's slightly different from a kind of self-service coffee machine where that would be appropriate. But I think in the pub, I would say get a fresh glass every time, I'm afraid. It might not be as great for the environment in terms of the amount of washing up they have to do, but I think from a COVID safety point of view, it's safer to go clean each time.
But do the staff, do they enforce that, the various pubs and restaurants? Because it is something that a lot of people do.
Yeah, I think they're getting better at it. And again, I think this is a bit like the schools, you know, they're getting better. I mean, more and more bars and restaurants. I mean, certainly, and as you know, I think I live in the city centre in Birmingham. You know, I've been out and about the last couple of days, and there's a real difference. You can really see some of the bars and pubs have got clear signage. They've got much better spaced tables. You know, the staff are wearing face coverings. There's those little QWERTY things that you scan with your phone and it gives you the menu on your phone. All of that is getting so much better. And we are getting better compliance. So I think, you know, it's one of those things that will come, but it will take a little bit of a while just to get it part of the cultural norm. And also, I think, you know, because we're going to stop drinking a bit earlier, and perhaps we're going to drink a bit better quality, but a bit less. It's going to change some of the ways we behave. And again, they should, from today, they should only be doing table service. So there's none of this going up to the bar anymore. It should be table service only. So the drink should be brought to you. And that, again, will solve the problem, because they're not going to come get your glass, take it back to the bar again, bring it back again.
Absolutely,
they're just going to bring you a new one.
Well, that's reassuring. Okay.
One final point, Justin. Just mindful of what you said, there's a likelihood of increased burials over the next few weeks. The last time, well, previously when COVID kicked in and there was an increase in burials, Golden Lock Road Mosque and Green Lane Mosque, they brought in their own mortuaries, and there was no need because we had one at Birmingham Airport. So specifically with Birmingham Airport, is that temporary mortuary still in place? Will we be able to reinstate that straight away, or has it gone and we're going to have to bring it back? And then what conversations are going to be held with like the major mosques again, so that we're prepared?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So I think we have been and continue to have the conversation with the mosques and the temples and the gurdwaras about, you know, the reality of where we may go next. I think based on our numbers, we will probably see deaths rise in about a month's time. Was when I'd really start to see them, expect to see them pick up. And the big question is, if we can get on top of the numbers now and start to hammer it down now, then they'll rise and they'll come down quite quickly. If we don't, we just keep going up, they will rise and they'll just keep coming up, and we'll be back to where we were, you know, in the spring, which was a really horrid experience, and I'd really rather avoid if we can. So I think we are talking with them. The mortuary is still at the airport. It wasn't deconstructed. There's a whole agreement around what's going on there. Birmingham is in a slightly different position because we've got a lot of surge capacity in the city. So we didn't ever really need additional mortuary facilities, you know, because we actually have got a huge amount. So they've renegotiated a bit of it, and I think from your kind of scrutiny angles and stuff that you can pick that up with Paul as well. But it is it's a different financial package, shall I say, this time. But the reality is it's still there. We didn't have to use it last time. We didn't have to use the things that some of the mosques stood up last time.
But that's what I mean. I don't want them to go to any more expense.
And we didn't advise them to set them up last time, and I wouldn't advise them to do it this time. But I think we've all learnt a lot through the first wave. You know, the reality is we are now starting the second wave. My hope is we will have a vaccine early next year, and that will prevent a third wave. But it is a very real world now that this is the second wave is here. It's not an if. I don't think it ever was an if. I think it was always a when, and unfortunately the when is now.
Can I ask my controversial question? Because as elected members, we get asked lots of questions, and one of the ones that I've had, especially over the last week and a half, is that, look, councillor, people die of flu, normal flu. People die of AIDS. People die of hepatitis. People die of various illnesses, more so in the third world. Why are we killing the economy here in Birmingham and the country because of COVID? Why can't we just live with it, similar to the example of Sweden is given? So how do I come back to them and say, well, this is COVID-19, this is different to everything else, and this is about trying to help the elderly and the vulnerable?
Yeah, and I think, I can understand the skepticism, but I think it's important to recognise, in this city we lost about 1,500 people so far to COVID. We lost 2,000 during World War II to the Blitz bombings, the series of bombings across Birmingham. And we've lost it in the same kind of period. So, we would normally lose that number of people over a much larger, long period of time. It's the condensation of the death. It's very high numbers of deaths in a short period of time, which makes it different. That's why this is a pandemic, not a kind of just a new disease that's going around. It is killing predominantly, well, it's killing a large number of elderly people, but it's not just stopping at the elderly. The three risk factors that you can do something about are smoking, obesity, and how well your long-term conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure are looked after. And the reason we stress those things is when you look at the people that were in intensive care and the people who died, it's not just the people over 80. It was people who had diabetes who were in their 30s and 40s. It's people who in their 20s that were had a body mass index of over 40 who died. And they died in large numbers, and they were on top of the people that would normally die. So that's the key bit as well, is that what we've seen is we people who would normally die every year also increased, but on top of that we had COVID deaths. So at certain points we were running 300-500 deaths in a week, which in normal times would be what we'd see in a month. It was such a difference, and that's why this is a really serious condition. Treatment has improved with the dexamethasone. Some of the drugs we have now reduce the chance of death, but they reduce it by about 10%. If they reduced it by 60%, we'd be in very different conversations. They're reducing it by very small amounts. And that's why it's so important. I do not want to come through this and look back and go, this disease killed more people than World War II, did in this city. Because unless we get this under control, that is the level of devastation we could see. So it is really important, and it remains really serious.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Varney. I don't think there are any more questions. Can't see anything on the question and answer chat. So thank you very much for coming along this evening and informing us. I think the main thing we need to take forward is stay healthy, exercise, eat well, and then observe the rules, the government rules.
Yeah,
okay.
And sign up to be a COVID champion. That's the other key point. Is join us and make a difference.
The COVID champion.
Be a COVID champion. Over 120 people in the first 48 hours have signed up. So join them and help us keep the city safe. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Okay, so following on from Dr. Varney, we'll move on to the next agenda item, and that's local updates and information. So our first guest is Sergeant Pennycook. I don't know if she's still here. So do we have any questions regarding policing, police issues, crime?
Is she here, Diana? Let's take questions.
I'm not able to tell. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this version of Teams. I much prefer the other one where you could see who's present and who's not.
Well, if she's there, I mean, the questions I've got, it keeps coming up, is we had 3 road traffic accidents on Bromford Road, and I've got the highway officers looking into it, but it's happening all across the avenues, regular complaints about speeding, and this is something that's come about since the COVID issues have arisen, because you had quiet streets, but it seems to have continued. So we need some action from the police, whether it's more present something, because I'm really fearful of there being a serious accident taking place along the avenues here in Hodge. So if the police can help us with that. And just a question around the enforcement in terms of COVID-19 breaches with businesses and schools. Is there a presence at schools because of social distancing? There's a presence around the ice cream van, although I know Kevin is now going to be looking into that. And the stats on the burglaries, have they increased? Have they not increased? Because we've had a number of issues, but I think with more people staying at home now, they should have decreased. Because of that, we did have a spate of car thefts and robberies from cars, but I think they've come down drastically over the last few months.
Okay, Sergeant Pennycook is still here, but I think the way the police computers are set up, they're not able to get into the meeting for some reason as a presenter. So okay. It's just individual questions, I'm afraid. She's not able to respond. The only way she can respond is through the chat.
Just an update around Tesco car park as well, because we get lots of issues around Tesco car park, and they've been continuous the last few months. I know Tesco was originally looking at bringing in a gating system, but I think the cost, and obviously they've spent literally thousands on COVID secure provisions in the car parks, and we're wondering whether the police have had more reports and whether any action is being taken in and around the Tesco car park. It seems to be a magnet for antisocial behaviour.
Okay, right. Sergeant Pennycook's replied, I'm aware of the... Oh, it's gone now. It just flashed up on the screen now and it's disappeared. So I'm just moving on to the issue you raised about accidents. I spoke to the engineer today about, and he said to get any changes on the highway, 10 serious accidents in a 3-year period are required to make any changes.
The only one we've got for that really is Tetchford Road, and I know there's some plans in progress once I-Lane works are completed for them to design some measures in place to try to calm the traffic down on Tetchford Road. We have had some serious injuries to people, and we've had a number of deaths over the last few years. So that does come into the category of seriousness.
I've been told there is some funding. Burglaries have gone up by 48%. This is due to individuals we have now identified and have been doing arrest attempts for. That's one of them. Yes, that's quite a high.
That is quite high. What's the actual number? Do we know the actual number? Or is that just a percentage?
That was just a percentage.
It might be. No, it might be.
Even the percentages are quite high. The actual individual.
Could be.
And domestic abuse has gone up by about 30% or something, but the actual cases were about 2 or 3.
Yeah.
As well as proactive patrols working up until 2 a.m. in the morning, which includes the TFMV reported.
Oh, okay.
Other issues in the ward, as drug dealing. I've had a few reports of drug dealing around the Chipperfield Road area. That keeps coming back. But I know Sergeant Pennycook's looking into that. It's on the case. Other than that, it seems to be speeding is the main issue in the ward.
Coming up. We can't tell how many participants in the meeting, can we?
No, I've got no questions. I don't know if anybody's got any questions while we still have the police, Sergeant Pennycook here. No. Okay, so if Tesco, we are working with traffic who are targeting the speeding issues, and traffic are working Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights to cover this.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, that's what we're after, because neighbourhood police don't work during the evening, do they?
Yeah, but we want to work with Street Watch as well to set up some speed controls in the area. Right, so no more questions for the police, and nothing to report other than that. Okay then, so
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you to the police.
Yeah, thanks for attending. Sorry we haven't got many questions for you, but we'll see you at the next one. Thank you. Bye. Then we'll move on to the, I don't know if she's in attendance, but we're supposed to have a representative from the West Midlands Fire Service. No. So Sergeant Pennycook has said, I will send you a summary of the points that you have raised.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Thanks for that.
I did have questions for the fire service around gardens. That seems to be on the increase in fireworks as well.
I think there's an increase in people burning rubbish in gardens, not just garden rubbish, but actual rubbish from household improvements, you know, wood, etc.
Well, if we can email the fire service and just ask them for a reply, we can just put that on social media. Yeah. Yes.
And it's causing issues with neighbours as well, the smoke from fires. But I think now that was more in the summer months when it was hot and the nights were long.
Still happening. I had a report over the weekend of 3 fires on the same road. It looks like one person starts a fire, then the next one thinks, hang on, this is a chaos, might as well start as well.
Yeah.
They will start burning their one or whatever they're burning.
Yeah, but I think as the tips were closed, when the tips were closed, there were a lot of fires then. It's seen a massive increase then, but it has gone down substantially. So there'll be more police patrols around the bonfire night, the 5th of November. There'll be increased incidents of bonfires in gardens, etc. And so how that needs to be policed as well in terms of gatherings.
Well, there might be more gatherings now. Everyone's going to be coming home at 10 p.m. from the various pubs like Hunters and the Raven. Leave him. So my son's coming. He's coming. He's took his blanket. He's gone.
Pass those questions on to the fire service, and we can get an update from that. Pass on to the next item, and that's highways. So we've got Kevin Gibbon from Highways, who's managed to get into the meeting. Hi, Kevin.
Got into this one.
I know you can get in. You have to pass on your secret to the others. It's special.
Yeah, folks, for me, it's just quite simply just keep reporting your issues to us. The resurfacing programme is starting. There's quite a substantial amount of work that's going to be done in Hodge Hill and Bromford area. I haven't got the programme to hand, so I can't tell you specific roads at the moment, but they will be done. Somebody's put a question in the chat about fly tipping on the common. If there is fly tipping, please report it through to on the Birmingham Council website. If it's dangerous, we will attend. We'll make safe. We'll do what we can to clear it as soon as possible, and we work with Fleet and Waste to clear it as well. But absolutely any issues that anybody's got with their road, pavement, footpath, grass verge, report them through, and we'll get somebody out there to attend.
Okay, the main one I'm getting questions about is Hodge Hill Road.
Hodge Hill Road, I believe he's on the programme, Councillor. I will check.
Okay.
And I'll try and get you some dates. I believe it's on the programme for resurfacing. I believe it is, but I will check. I'll try and give me a couple of minutes. I'll try and find out if it's on the programme, and I'll try and give an answer before the end of the meeting.
Also, Rivermead, I'm getting the same queries about that.
Rivermead is, yeah, I've had a few inquiries about Rivermead. So Rivermead Park, yeah, it's an older surface. It's wearing, but there's no danger there. There's no public safety issue on the surface at the moment. It's been monitored through routine inspections. Yeah.
Although residents say that it hasn't been done for about 40 years, I don't think the length of time is part of the criteria, is it?
The length of time isn't part of the criteria, no. Unfortunately, the surface is still quite good on Rivermead Park. Mm-hmm. So we'll continue to monitor through routine inspection, and when it does become an issue, then of course it will be looked at.
Okay, it is a cul-de-sac, and they're saying that the wear is because people are driving down there and they're not aware it's a cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
so
the problem with
problems.
There are 2 signs either side of the road on Rivermead Park. I've checked that. That does say that it's a dead end. I will check the surface again. I'll go there tomorrow. But it's just the age of the road, unfortunately. It does look a bit rough in places, but it's not dangerous in any way, shape or form, unfortunately, at the moment.
All right, thank you. I know there are some others that take priority, so
yeah,
maybe in the future we'll get
in the future, definitely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, just a couple of queries from me, Chair. The first one, we need some help from Kevin here. We're getting more and more annoyed residents. Hang on, my phone's off again. Switched it off. Getting more and more complaints from residents about inconsiderate and illegal parking on the grass verges. And there's a national consultation going through, so I keep asking residents to complete that service so we can ban parking on pavements and grass verges. Subject to some exemptions in terms of like the narrow streets, etc. But what I am needing is around some of the roads. I can send you a list of the roads where I've had residents query whether we can send a letter around. We did this quite a few years back, just reminding people that they shouldn't be parking on the grass verges.
Yeah.
The grass verges are decimated. It's either by people inconsiderately parking on there or builders placing their materials on there or bricks, etc.
Yeah.
If I can send you a list of the roads and we can get a letter sent out, because you're right, they tend to listen to it and realise that it could be penalised if there's a continuous breach of that. And the second one is around the trees programme. Every week now, myself and Diana are getting emails from Kia and the City Council that certain trees are dead or, they've all overgrown, they will be removed, which is good because that shows that the assessment that's been carried out by Kia is actually working, is happening quick, it's happening really well. And just let everyone know who's watching, who's a resident or a community group, that the tree assessment programme for pruning will commence next year, April, for Bromford and Hodge Hill Ward. So you'll see lots of trimming. The current trimming that's taken place adequately over Hodge Hill Road, that's because the roads where you've got buses going to, where that buses are using, those trees are trimmed on a more regular basis to ensure that there's no hazard for the buses as well. So Hodge Hill Road was trimmed, but that was in order to make space for the buses. But the actual trimming and the programme that we've got in Bromford and Hodge Hill Ward will commence from April next year. And we've got evidence of that because we get emails every week on the trees that will be removed before that programme takes place. And any new trees, again, if we can involve ourselves in in requesting whether some of the new trees are being planted, because I've got at least 5 locations where residents have asked for trees to be planted, which were in locations prior to the Amy contract.
Yes.
Amy never actually replaced, but those trees, the location, for example, there's one on Bromford Road near to the school where there's a tree there for many, many years. It got hit by a car, it was removed, and it was never ever replaced. And we fought with Amy for years, but they could never replace it.
I'm still fighting.
We need to get that tree.
There's one on
Their argument was that it wasn't in the programme when they took on the contract, which is fair enough, I get that. But if we've got a tree that's been taken off around the corner, then obviously it has to be replaced. Why can't we just replace it there if the residents don't want another tree replaced at the location where it was previously?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I will get the tree planting programme for the ward.
Brilliant.
And the pruning programme, and I'll get them sent over to you as a matter of urgency, so you know which roads have been done, where the trees are going in, etc.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay. I think we've got a few trees that are going to be removed in the next few weeks. We've got a couple on Chipperfield Road.
Yeah.
3 on Falmouth, 1 on Ryman, and 2 on Stetchford Road.
Yeah.
That I'm aware of.
Plaistow Avenue, Radstock Avenue, Lindale Avenue, there's loads.
So they could have been quite busy.
Funnily enough, one on Plaistow Avenue is one that I asked to be replaced a number of years back, but it was kicked back because they said it's not large enough. Now all of a sudden it's got, I think it begins with the S in Canting or something. It's got some form of disease now, and it's going to be removed anyway. So residents are happy.
I'll get all that information sent over to you.
All right, so nothing more for Kevin. No one's got any questions. That's it. So thank you, Kevin. Thanks for coming along.
Last thing for me, I'll say is please, anybody that's listening, any issues with your with the road outside your property, with outside your house, anything you see, slabs uneven, potholes, please report them through, and we'll get them fixed. We'll get them sorted.
Is that a promise, Kevin?
I want to ask. It's about
I'll give you thousands.
Slabs.
Keep them coming through. We'll get them reported. We'll get them logged. We'll get them sorted. I promise.
Thank you.
Residents prefer tarmac to slabs. Is there a choice, or does it have to be slabs?
No. So if the material outside the property is slabs, we have to replace it with slabs. If the material is tarmac, we have to replace it with tarmac. If there is a reason why tarmac can be put down rather than slabs, then we have to make that case to Birmingham Council to say this is the reason why we need this changing, and then it's up to the council whether we change it or not.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But if there are reasons there, please let me know, and we'll do the assessment, and then we'll put the request through.
All right. Thank you. I think I've got no questions from any residents. So thank you, Kevin, for coming along. And we'll see you at the next one. Okay.
Thank you very much for having me. As normal, any issues, please let me know.
Anytime. Thank you.
Well, take care, folks. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks. Okay, so just next is ward councillors updates. We've got anything to update on?
Oh, just what I've just mentioned.
Yeah.
The consultation on banning pavement and grass verge parking, that's now gone live from the government. Something that we've been lobbying for a number of years now, and it's something I took to scrutiny this year. And the meeting was cancelled, the second meeting, because of COVID. But there's a consultation, and I've put it onto social media, and I'll put it on again actually when I report on this ward forum meeting. It'd be really good if residents can get involved in the consultation. It's a countrywide consultation, because in London, Greater London Act prohibits any parking on pavements, and it's something. One of the options is that you roll that out to the rest of the country, or you have another option where you leave it to the local authorities to be able to penalise drivers. At the moment, we can only penalise drivers if there's appropriate signage. Although we've got a traffic regulation order in place, we haven't got the signage. The reason we haven't got the signage because it would cost tens of millions to place around on every single road. I did lobby and ask the council when we were in scrutiny if we can just have the signage. Because that's with my lawyer's hat. I believe if you put the signage, as you enter the city and as you exit the city, that should be sufficient. But the lawyers are still looking at that. I'm awaiting response. Just on the flood defences on the Bromford, the clay deliveries have started on Chillingham Road. That's the route they're using. But the Environment Agency is sweeping up on a daily basis all the clay and all the material that's coming onto the road. Sandhurst Avenue, I've had a number of reports now of car traders selling cars, which is restricting the access for the residents on the road. And that's something I'm going to take up with traders. I'm not sure if there's much we can do if they're not advertising the cars and there's no actual business operating. If it's people just selling private cars, using eBay or something, it might be difficult, but it's something that's come up. When Canton Croft, after 7 months, we've managed to get the building materials moved from there. The landlord finally listened, because we did threaten him with legal action to remove up those building materials from there. Road traffic accidents I've mentioned already. We've had a number on Bromford Road, and we've got highway officers looking into that to see if there's anything we can do in terms of putting in place measures to reduce the number of accidents. Pedestrian handrails, after quite delayed, because they were supposed to have gone in around about April time, but because of COVID it was delayed. They were part of the Iron Lane works that we had, the larger project, and they've now gone in, and there's some bollards which have actually been lost in transit, which are going to go into Stetchford Lane near to Pure Gym, because there's lots of illegal parking there. So that should be next week or the week after. I presented the petition on behalf of residents of Kempson Road and some on Ridfield Road in terms of the sycamore trees, the overgrown sycamore trees, which are causing illnesses to some of the children there, and basically they're overgrown and they're just blocking everything in those properties. That's now gone through. And then final thing, just want to say about Arms Around Birmingham, which was set up by the active admins on myself and Diane more so than me. I just helped out in Bromford and Hodge. You actually went around most of the 11 routes across the city, so well done to all the volunteers. And on that note, thank you to all the volunteers, Hodge Residents Group and the other below the radar volunteers. We've got quite a lot. We're blessed with a number of volunteers, some that come onto social media, some that don't come onto social media, to go around helping, clean the streets and making it look as nice as it actually is in comparison to lots of other areas in the city.
Yes, we're blessed. So also regarding the rails, are there any spare rails that could go in a location on Hodge Hill Road and Buckland's End?
Well, it's funny you should say that. People think that's a planted question, although it's not. But there is some old railing that's been left on the old Iron Lane works, which we've got access to. So if you've got a location, if you let me know, then I can let Alan and Andy know of that location, and we can get them reinstalled. But they're the old ones; they're not the brand new ones.
I don't think
you haven't got the money for new ones before you ask. We're still waiting for the bollards to be installed in those various locations that we gave 18 months ago. But because of COVID and local engineer, Andy's not well, is he? So just wish him well as well. I hope he gets speedy recovery. And once he's back, then we'll get those bollards installed, hopefully before the next Ward Forum meeting.
Excellent. Okay. So I think that's about it. We've covered everything. So
no questions from residents?
No.
I don't know how this system is working today. I can't raise my hand and I can't see who the party is.
No, I can't see the chat, but I can see the questions and answers.
I can't see the chat.
So I'm going to ask if next time we can go to the other version of Teams, which I think works better.
That was better, the previous version.
Yeah. So,
well, that's the first time ever there's not been any questions, so thank you. I can watch Liverpool v Lincoln. And I managed to have my chat. I switched my camera off as well, so I'm quite pleased.
Right, well, thank you everybody for attending. I don't know who's there, but hopefully see you at the next Ward Forum. As soon as we have a date, we'll release the date for you. Thanks everyone. Okay, good night.
Night.
Night. Bye.
Bye.